So as new developments continue in the case around the clock, let's dig into what happens next with criminal defense attorneys Andell Brown and Brian Claypool. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hi, Shannon.
Thank you, Shannon. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so very interesting. I want to read something from FoxNews.com about police showing up to talk to the parents. It says Northport police entered the Laundrie home Friday evening. This is the boyfriend's family home. Police were shocked to learn that Brian Laundrie wasn't there, and his parents told investigators that they hadn't seen him since Tuesday, September 14th. So they didn't even report him quote-unquote missing. It was that police showed up there, and that's how they found out he hadn't been seen allegedly by his parents since Tuesday. Brian, what potential liability or charges could be in the works for the parents if it turns out that Brian Laundrie is in any way responsible or that they helped him escape in some way?
Yeah, Shannon, the most relevant charge would be what's called accessory after the fact. And that means that arguably the parents knew that their son Brian Laundrie may have committed a crime, in this case a first-degree felony, and they provided any aid whatsoever to help him escape authorities. I looked at the statute in Florida. It's very broad. So if there's any evidence that law enforcement unveiled that shows any communications between Brian Laundrie and his parents where he's disclosing what happened to Gabby and it's bad news, and the parents failed to tell law enforcement where he's going, or they lie to law enforcement, for example, then they could be charged with accessory after the fact. But one other point, Shannon, that's shocking to me is why is Brian Laundrie not found? Why didn't they have surveillance on this guy from the minute he got back in town? What rational human being would get back from a trip without his fiance and not comment on it at all, and not go out in the media? Yeah, not go out and say, hey, where is she? Let's go find her. He didn't do a single thing but flee. And that's consciousness of guilt. So I'm shocked that they didn't do surveillance on Brian Laundrie.
Well, the three of us being attorneys, we all know it's innocent until proven guilty, but he's taking a lot of actions that raise a lot of questions for people. And of course, police would have more information. They've said they're not sharing everything, as would be the case, because they have things close to the case that only the person who would have potentially perpetrated a crime would know. But I want to play something, Brian, to your point, from Josh Taylor. He is the Northport Police Department spokesperson about not tracking Brian.
He would not speak with us. So knowing that, we weren't dedicating a whole lot of resources to following around someone who is not wanted on a crime.
So, Andell, what do you make of that?
I mean, you know, it's a tough situation, Shannon. You have a small town police department with limited resources. They're trying to investigate this murder. There are leads all across the country, and I guess they thought that wasn't the best use of their resources. But it's also mind-blowing because really we only have one suspect, and that's Brian Laundrie. He was the last person that was seen with her. He's acting in ways that, as Brian said, and you agreed, Shannon, are strange. What normal person acts in that way? I think every resource should have been dedicated to figuring out what Brian Laundrie's up to, where he's going, and where he is now. I think there are way more questions than answers, and his behavior has done nothing but put him squarely in the crosshairs of law enforcement.
Yeah, and Andell, you mentioned this is a smaller police force down there, so there are questions now about the FBI, about other agencies, and now we have several states potentially involved. So, Andell, a quick comment from you about when the FBI should have gotten involved, did get involved, where we can go from here with that federal agency.
Right. And, you know, the FBI, they come in, they bring resources that small town would never have. They're up and going right now. It's hard for us to say when they should have gotten involved because, remember, they were searching in Utah, acres upon acres upon acres, looking to find Gabby's body. They were searching in Wyoming. There are numerous places they were looking for until they recently got the tips, some from the vlogger that saw the van at the park, some from various people where they were able to narrow their search. But for a long period of time, they were looking over a very expansive piece of territory.
Yeah, so Brian, if it turns out that Brian Laundrie is in some way culpable or charged, and he is alive, and he has absconded to, say, another country, what would the extradition process be for the U.S. at this point?
Well, before we get to the extradition process, Shannon, I think we should talk about the autopsy. This is one of the most important autopsies you're going to see in criminal law in the last decade, because that autopsy of Gabby is going to be like the 13th juror, Shannon. In order for for law enforcement to even pursue Brian Laundrie, they're going to need an autopsy report that reveals a homicide and not an accidental death. So what the coroner's going to have to look at is things like what's under Gabby's fingernails. Is there any evidence of a struggle? Is there possibly DNA of Brian Laundrie under her fingernails? Any scratch marks, any bruises on Gabby's body? Anything that coroner can use to determine homicide. And then they can go after Brian Laundrie. Depends on what country he's in to determine extradition laws. If he's in a country that doesn't allow extradition, then he might be free from any charges.
Well, a lot of skeptics out there feel like if that's the case, he's gotten quite a head start with the assist potentially of his parents. But again, innocent until proven guilty. We will track this case to the end. And we appreciate both of you sharing your expertise. Andel and Brian, thank you.
Thanks,
Shannon. Thank you.